Good morning. Try this again. Good morning. There, that's even better than yesterday. My goodness. And it's even earlier, and they're even fuzzier. Sorry for the scramble on the redo of the schedule, but there's an emergency back at Harvard I've got to go back today for, which unfortunately, and I don't particularly want to, but that's the way it goes sometimes. I just got this new title at Harvard. It's the University Technology Security Officer. Push the little button and it doesn't go forward. Push this button. There you go. It's a new title for me. There's certainly not it's not a previously unknown title. It's sort of some of the stuff I've been doing, but it's actually formalized. It took a long time to get formalized. It took a long time because it wasn't, the general counsel wasn't really sure that they wanted to have somebody that they actually had to relate to that knew something about security. They were very nervous about that. And it's technology security officer because I don't have to deal with the guys with the guns, which I'm eminently thankful for. Harvard is a corporation, and it's a big corporation. It's an ISP to other parts of the university. It's an ISP to the medical area and the hospitals over there. And so we're talking about technology security officer for a $2.5 billion corporation that is also an ISP. But it's what is this role for? Well, it's actually kind of fuzzy. It's these are bullets out of my job description, which says I help coordinate this, I help coordinate that, I help coordinate this other thing here, I advise the CIO, I facilitate this, and I monitor that. But there's actually nothing there. These are all very fuzzy things. And that's actually a byproduct of the architecture of the university. When you've been around as long as Harvard has, 370-ish years or something like that, you figure out how you want to do things, and that's the way you do things. So from the outside, Harvard sort of looks like this. It sort of looks like a thing. But actually, Harvard is not a thing. Harvard is a bunch of thinglets. Some thinglets are bigger than other thinglets. Some thinglets are more sure of themselves than other thinglets. Faculty of Arts and Sciences, about 60% of the university, about 70% of the ego. Law school is up there because they actually can challenge you in ways that you don't want to get challenged. Medical school, business school, little pictures didn't come out here, but the business school is so much part of Harvard that it doesn't even share harvard.edu domain name. They have hbs.edu. And this is to prove that they know that this internet thing exists. They went off and they got their own internet connection and their own domain name. This is to make the business folks that come to Harvard and spend some obscene amount of money for a 3-week training program in the summer feel much better that they're actually learning something about the internet. Well, they actually do. The business school is not too bad at that. But it is certainly, this is a university which is some of its parts is a polite way to put it. It's certainly a pile of parts. Whether it's a sum or not, we'll have to see. I work for that cloud in the middle, central administration. And the central administration has very much dotted line relationship to the rest of the university. But actually the picture of Harvard, this isn't the full picture of Harvard. This is the politically correct picture of Harvard. The more real picture of Harvard is this. We have researchers with even more ego than the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, if that can be passively imagined. And we have lots of them. And they don't believe they report to anybody at all. General counsel, the risk management people, the central administration, and certainly not to me. Well, I was also the Y2K geek for Harvard back a ways. And going off to the research labs and saying, you know, you ought to think about this and check to see whether you've got something that's Y2K compliant, the general answer was, it's not your problem. And it took 6 months to get a note out of the general counsel to say, if indeed something goes wrong, it's not our problem, it's your problem. And it was only then that they started even vaguely thinking about it, and then it was only about 10% of them. So the university is not a university, it's a collection of parts. We got a new president recently, Harvard did. New president is Larry Sumner's. That's his signature. If you take out your billfolds, you may find that signature on some of your money. He was the Treasury Secretary a few years back. He was the youngest faculty member in Harvard's history, I believe, in the economics department when he was at Harvard previously. He's come back, and he's come back with a vengeance. It seems like the corporation decided that this fractious thing that went under the guise of Harvard should actually become a thing rather than a bunch of thinglets. And so he's trying to change things. I heard him speak at the senior staff thing last year where he said, every tub in its own bottom, which is an old Harvard slogan, simply won't cut it anymore. You just can't use that anymore. That's not a legitimate excuse. And he's now in the mode of saying, well, that's stupid. We're going to do it this other way. He told all of the deans that we're going to have one development system. Not this is the thing that you go out and dun the alumni for money. And Harvard's pretty good at that. When you got $19 billion in the bank, you got to be pretty good at something. And that's what they're pretty good at. They don't happen to be pretty good at translating that money into my salary, but that's the way it goes. So Larry's trying to change things. It's changing slowly, but it is changing at a glacial pace. So what can I do as this new role? I don't know. It's brand new. It's a month old. So I'm trying. Some stuff I've been doing. There's this University Technology Architecture group that I've been running for the past few years, which is the Harvard CIOs. And we vet new ideas in the university PIN system and an authentication system and authorization systems and things like that, and policies. We work with RMAS. Now, RMAS is the Risk Management and Audit Services. That used to be called the auditors, but that was too threatening. So they changed the name to protect the guilty, and now is risk management, and we're supposed to call them risk management, not audit services. And the Office of General Counsel, which is Harvard's risk-aversive lawyers. So I came up with this set of best practices for designing your network and running your computer and things like that, and vetted it through the UTAG. And I sent it off to the General Counsel, and they sent me back a note saying, you can't call it best practices. They can't be the best practices. They may be pretty good practices, but they can't be the best practices. That's lawyers. We pay them a lot of money, too, to be that obstructionist. But that's what that's their role in life, is to be obstructionist and to be risk aversive, and they've actually done pretty good a job at that. The other thing I do is I go wander around to various schools and find out what they're doing, and so far it's actually not too bad, other than they say we don't have any idea what the research group's doing. We don't have any control over them, but we do pretty fine for the faculty and the staff. We block them in and things like that. You heard yesterday about some laws. They didn't actually apply to you very much, but it was polite. It was polite for the woman to be here to tell you about laws that didn't really apply to you that much. These are laws that don't apply to you that much, but they do apply to companies, and either corporations or just regular business corporations, or particularly universities or banks and things like that. And it's a wonderful stick to have. Actually, laws are a way to come and say, it's not my opinion that you have to do this, it's the law. And if you violate it, that's actually not good juju. And that's a good stick to have if you're in this foggy position that I'm in. And you've heard of most of these things. The one you may not have heard of is that, and it actually may apply to you, if you happen to collect credit cards or anything like that for dial-up customers or something, there's a California law called the Database Security Breach Act, which says that if you even think that the data that you've collected, the credit card number and expiration date, for example, you've collected from a customer, if you even think that somebody has seen that, you have to notify all California residents. Now, you could do that. You could just notify the California residents if you wanted to. That seems to be remarkably bad PR, to only notify the California residents, which basically means you have to notify everybody. But that's actually a wake-up call. I've actually gotten a little letter from somebody in California saying, by the way, a laptop was stolen with your Social Security number on it, even though I'm not a California resident. But that's actually a useful law for that sort of thing, and it will wake up some people. What's Harvard look like? Harvard looks like what you would expect. There's no firewall. It would be a remarkably silly thing to have a university firewall. As Steve Bellevin once said about MIT, you have to assume that the network is in the hands of the enemy, the MIT student. Well, we don't have students quite like that, but they try very hard. The trade school down the street does do a very good job of training network attackers. We do have firewalls inside some of the schools, and they're very silly too, but they happen to fit into the mindset of the folks that are running that particular school. They do a very good job of making sure that the problems are within, which of course that's what the problems always are, is within the firewall. There's a lot of good. The general model that folks use is you've got the servers, and then right outside the servers you've got a switch, and then right outside the switch you've got a router, and you put ACLs up to yin-yang in the router. And that actually works pretty well. And there's actually some clue lying around. It's not a prevalent quality, but there's some clue lying around. And other than the students, we do have a monoculture, software monoculture with Microsoft. The students tend to be about 40 to 50% Macs, but and I've got a Mac. Lots of players in this picture, none of whom can be controlled. The last one is definitely not controllable. So what's my task? My task is to let the schools think they came up with good ideas. Now that's a little bit inventive, but it actually does work. And then use these laws as sticks when you can. And get buy-ins on the guidelines, like the best practices. I spend far too much time posturing and pontificating, cajoling, not requiring. That's hence the title of the talk. We're not fighting worms and viruses with good practices. We're fighting them with pontification. So I'm saying, hey, you know, that's really stupid. You ought to do something else. Actually, I don't say that because you never start out saying something stupid and getting their cooperation that way. The whole thing reminded me of a joke from a comedy routine from a group called Bert and I. I don't know many of you heard of that. It's an old Maine comedy team. And the premise of this was this drunk was hauled in front of the judge for falling asleep in bed, smoking, and setting the bed on fire. And he said, "No, Judge, that's absolutely not what happened. The bed was on fire when I got into it." And that's the way I feel. Thank you.